Democratic Congresswoman Julie Johnson of Farmers Branch, thank you so much, and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
So good to see you again, Jack.
So here we are in this big political showdown between Texas Republicans and Democrats over these new congressional maps that were drawn that would give Republicans 5 extra seats. And this is not only political, but personal for you because your district, the 32nd congressional district, is one of those that would change dramatically. And in this new map, it would become a Republican district extending out to Far East Texas. And so I'm wondering, what was your reaction when you first saw this new map?
Hmm. Well, I just think the whole process is really unfortunate and terrible that the Republicans are marching down this road. It clearly demonstrates how underwater they are with the Trump policies and what Republicans have voted for, cutting all these people off of Medicaid and SNAP and what they're doing immigration wise and just all the things. And so they're having a desperate attempt to try to alienate and marginalize voters. And I was very disappointed to see what they're doing. But what it matters to my personal seat really doesn't matter. This is about what happens to national Democrats and what's happening in our state and the fact that, Abbott is so willing to bend the knee to Trump. What happened, what I thought was so interesting is, Trump called Georgia wanting 11,000 votes, and they had the courage to say, no, that's not right. Trump calls Abbott saying, I want 5 seats, and all he can say is July soon enough. So it's a contradiction in terms of how which Republicans are willing to stand up for what's right and which ones are not.
Well, certainly what happened in Georgia is a totally different situation than this, but let me ask you as far as what are your plans now? Because if in fact these maps are approved, and there's going to be a legal fight over it, no doubt. But the legal process takes years. I mean, there is still ongoing right now, if I'm not mistaken, Congresswoman. There is a court case involving the current 2021 maps that were drawn. And
Right.
so here we are 4 years later. And so then the question becomes, if these maps are approved, what are you going to do? Are you going to run in this new 32nd congressional district, or then do you have to find yourself and saying, all right, are you going to challenge Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne in the 24th district? Are you going to challenge Congressman Mark VC in the 33rd district? His seat would move to Dallas County.
hmm Well, right now, Jack, we're focusing on killing the maps. And we're focusing on making sure that the scheme that the Republicans have to try to steal some seats doesn't actually ultimately happen. And that is the sole source of my focus. And also, the maps haven't passed the legislature yet. One of the things that I have learned from being a member of the Texas legislature is bills are rarely come out the way they come in. And so we'll have to see what the ultimate final map looks like, if they make any amendments or changes to it. And then we'll just take a good look. I'll get with my team and with my family. We'll make some decisions about what we're going to do. But right now, that's a little premature for me. Right now, we're focusing on killing these maps. Right now, I have the 32nd Congressional District in its current form, and it has not been officially altered yet. So that's what I'm running for. And if the maps do pass, then we'll just take a good hard look at all of our options.
I was going to say, I mean, you have to be thinking about that.
Of course. I mean, yeah, but of course, it's human nature to think about that. But again, there's all these coulda, shoulda, wouldas. And so we have to wait and see what ultimate maps actually pass and when. And then I'll get with my colleagues and we'll huddle up, we'll evaluate all of our options, and then we'll make some decisions at the appropriate time.
But let me ask you, there are some Democrats who have stayed behind. You've been in the Texas House. You were part of the Texas House in 2021. The last time there was a quorum break, you were among those who went to Washington, D.C. And some Democrats say that actually benefited them because they were able to negotiate uh, what they thought were improvements to the voter integrity laws, which the Democrats had objected to 4 years ago.
Mhm.
Now Republicans say they're not negotiating. They say they're not going to go for any substitutes. So what do you say to that?
Again, we'll ultimately see what happens. On the quorum break that we had last time in 2021, obviously we were protesting a really terrible elections bill. And it had some horrible provisions of prohibiting souls to the polls. It made it a felony to drive more than three people to the polls. I don't think that that act of providing transportation to vote equates to other felonies and the evil intent that can be encompassed with kidnapping and other things. So the fact that they related those two was ridiculous. And that was part of the negotiation. We were able to get those provisions removed and in order to return to core. I mean, at that time they said they were never negotiating either. So negotiations are always on the table. Everything is always on the table until we have a final deal. And so, and I think you're also seeing a lot of national pressure. California is going to drop a map. They're going to rule out their Republicans. New York's going to look at redistricting out their Republicans. Maryland has a map to draw out Andy Harris. Washington State is looking at a map. Other national Republicans are like, what is going on? This is so wrong and inappropriate and putting pressure on Texas not to proceed. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if Speaker Johnson intervenes to try to bring calm to the House chamber and to the body and see what happens. But right now it's all out war across the country, and this is not limited to Texas. And I think there's other factors in play as well.
Well, let me ask you your comment about Speaker Johnson. What are you hearing as far as that is concerned? I mean, do you really see Congress, trying to step in here?
Well, it depends. There's a lot of Republicans who are going to lose their seats. And there are only three votes. It depends on if they choose to use their power. They could decide, you know what, we're not voting on anything until our seats are protected. We're not going to vote on anything until this effort is, and then they could officially stop all of Congress, just like they did with the Epstein files. And so who knows? I mean, they have a lot of power. Some of these Republicans, and if they choose to stand up and fight for their seats, it could completely change the dynamic. But we'll see. That's what I said. There's a lot of cards to be played in this game, and we're just getting started.
But as far as the other states, California, they have a bipartisan commission, and former Governor Schwarzenegger said he's going to fight that tooth and nail if the Democrats try to do that out there. In New York State, Governor Hochul, if I'm not mistaken, said that even if they wanted to do this, they would not be able to do it in time for the 2026 midterms. It would have to be the 2028 election. So there are still a lot of roadblocks for those big Democratic states to do that. No?
Yeah, I think the California, from what I understand about California, is they can draw either 5 to 9 seats of the Republicans out. They have to submit their map to the voters in early September to have a vote. They're not changing their independent commission. They're just substituting a new map until 2032. So their requirements and their procedural hurdles are a lot less than what people perceive them to be. And it's a Democratic state, and I think they're very confident that they could get the maps passed.
So let's talk a little bit. We've talked a little bit of before. I mean, the Texas Democrats, the maps have to be in place by December 8th, which is the last day for candidate filing. And in order to block it, I mean, the Texas Democrats can't stay out for 4 months, right? I mean, that's just not realistic. At some point, they're going to have to come back. Isn't that right?
Well, they have to make those decisions. They're the ones that are affected. It's their decision to make and their elected office to make. And I'm sure that their caucus will make those decisions as they see fit. It's not mine to weigh in on.
And let me ask you, because Republicans have said that the Democrats have been doing this, have been gerrymandering their states, California, New York, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, et cetera. And now they're upset because Texas Republicans are catching up and playing offense now. What do you say to that?
Oh, I don't think that's accurate. I think California, they've had independent commissions. They've had independent agencies drawing their maps, not purely partisan. If California was doing purely partisan gerrymandering, they'd have 52 Democratic seats and 0 Republican seats. They have a map to be able to do that. Texas, Florida, some of these states have done partisan gerrymandering for a long time.
But
I
that's
personally,
allowed, right? Partisan
well,
is
of course,
allowed.
it is. But I personally favor a national independent redistricting system for all the states. But our point is, if Republican states like Texas are going to engage in mid-decade partisan gerrymandering, then the Democratic states need to do the same. We all have to play by the same rules. And so if the Republicans are going to proceed down this path, then I think the Democratic states should respond in kind as well.
And do you think that we are going to see going forward more frequent redistricting? Maybe not
Well,
the once in a decade that we are accustomed to. Some people may like it, some people may not, but it is legal, right?
Well, for now, I think what you see now is in response to this national effort, two Republicans, one in California, one in New York, both who face being gerrymandered out of their seats, are filing legislation to prohibit this very thing effective immediately, to stop Texas from being able to do this in federal elections. And so, I mean, I think this has become a national attention of should we be able to do this mid-decade? I mean, we do it due to reapportionment every 10 years due to the census. But it's very disruptive to the body. It's very disruptive to our constituents to have this done so frequently and so based on the changing winds. And so, I would personally support their legislation to make this every 10 years. I think that is more appropriate for the system. But we'll see if they can get that passed. But I think the fact that there's already Republican support, they just need one more vote, and with the Democrats, we could pass that bill. And so we'll see. I think that there's a lot of national movement towards stopping mid-decade redistricting.
And I also want to ask you about your thoughts on Governor Abbott filing this emergency petition with the Texas Supreme Court to remove the House Democratic Caucus Chair, Gene Wu, state representative out of Houston, remove him from office.
Yeah,
What do you make of that?
it's absolutely ridiculous. It's a blatant power grab by Abbott to try to show he's tougher than Paxton. You know what I think is hilarious is right now, Paxton, Cornyn, and Abbott, they're all in this contest of who can be the most extreme Republican. And, they're fighting with each other. Abbott filed his thing, and then Paxton said, oh, no, you don't get to, I get to. And your thing doesn't count. I'm the only one that gets to. They're having a fight on the playground as to who could be the biggest bully towards these Democrats. There's no constitutional basis to remove Chairman Wu from his elected office. His constituents duly elected him to serve, and it's absolutely outrageous that Abbott seems to think that their votes don't count.
And the attorney general's threatened to do the same, essentially, if the Democrats don't come back on Friday.
That's right. They're huffing and puffing and who can be the biggest bully on the playground, and they don't have a valid basis to do this, in my opinion.
All right, we shall see. Congresswoman Julie Johnson of Farmers Branch, thank you so much as always. We appreciate it.
As always, it's great to be with you, Jack. Thank you.